calls Trump at one point a sleazeball, a narcissist. He said not very smart, called him nasty, and just about every quality you would not want somebody to have.
Brutal quotes about Donald Trump from none other than Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell have the media abuzz, and no doubt Donald Trump is going to be very upset when he hears how mean but true they are. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, one of the few things that brings me joy in life is to hear Republicans viciously fighting with other Republicans, especially when it's these two. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump famously don't get along particularly well, especially since Donald Trump left office and he spent much of his time insulting McConnell. McConnell, who is ever the party man, right? Like he puts party above country. So even though he is personally disgusted by Trump, and you're going to find out just how much, he didn't reciprocate. He basically kept his opinions about Trump to himself in public. He's a party guy, come hell or high water. Trump is obviously not. He's a narcissist. And so he'd insult Mitch McConnell even when it was not particularly politically expedient to do so. Well, we're actually getting some more information about just what Mitch McConnell thinks about Donald Trump. And it's not good for Trump and will no doubt piss him off and make the next contact between them quite awkward. So we're going to play this clip and do some reading, and we'll unpack it all together.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has some harsh words for his party under Donald Trump. In an upcoming biography by the Associated Press's Michael Tackett, McConnell says the, quote, MAGA movement is completely wrong. I want to bring in CNN's chief congressional correspondent and host of Inside Politics Sunday, Manu Raju. These are really strong comments from McConnell.
Yeah, and a lot of this was reserved in the aftermath of January 6, 2021. Remember how Trump and McConnell, they really worked closely together through the duration of Donald Trump's time in office. If it weren't for McConnell, Donald Trump would not have been able to dramatically reshape the Supreme Court. Of course, McConnell kept that Supreme Court seat vacant under Barack Obama for more than a year. Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court seats. McConnell also helped usher through a major tax cut law. But in the aftermath of January 6, McConnell, his views completely changed. And he talked about the impeachment trial, the second impeachment trial. Donald Trump, of course, was acquitted. Mitch McConnell voted to acquit Donald Trump, but he leveled some scathing criticism, not just on the Senate floor, but also to Michael Tackett of the Associated Press. He said, I'm not at all conflicted about whether what the president did is an impeachable offense. He said, I think it is. Urging an insurrection and people attacking the Capitol as a direct result is about as close to an impeachable offense as you can imagine, with the possible exception of maybe being an agent for another country. Remember, he justified his decision to acquit at the time because he said it was a procedural argument. It was Donald Trump was out of office. The impeachment trial in the Senate happened after Donald Trump had left office. They said Republicans like McConnell said you can't do this to a former president. They thought Trump would be done with the Republican Party at that point. Of course, that has not happened, but he.
So there's obviously more to this clip, and we're going to look at it. But again, just unpack some of what Manu Raju is talking about. Despite their personal animus, Trump and McConnell were pretty effective when it came to at least one thing, and that is reshaping the federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court. Thanks to McConnell's Machiavellian scheming, which really began before Trump took office, it happened in the last year of President Obama's term. McConnell enabled it so that Trump was able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. Half of the conservative supermajority was appointed directly by Trump. How he did it, of course, was by, in just total bad faith, inventing this new precedent, this new tradition where the incumbent president can't fill a Supreme Court vacancy during an election year. And so even though it was 11 months before the election, McConnell said, no, you're not going to get a confirmation hearing or any sort of hearing about your appointee. Suck it, Mr. President. That was the posture. All the Republicans said, and look, we're bound by this rule too. So if the Republican wins the 2016 election, and then if they have a vacancy in 2020, the final year of their term, we will not fill that vacancy. And then, of course, they lied and did just that because Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died in 2020 when Trump was president. And just weeks, not months, weeks before the election, Mitch McConnell allowed Trump to appoint Amy Coney Barrett and made sure she was confirmed. So they invented a BS rule to screw over the Democrats, and then they broke their own rule to screw over the Democrats, and that gave Trump 3 Supreme Court justices. So again, between that and other federal judges, McConnell and Trump were very effective together, mostly because of McConnell, in reshaping the federal judiciary. But there was a clear personal animus besides that, particularly after January 6th. And again, I'll also say, before we play the remainder of the clip, the reason that there wasn't a Senate trial while Trump was in office, because the insurrection occurred on January 6th, Trump didn't leave office until 2 weeks later, January 20th. It was because McConnell deliberately delayed the trial. Nancy Pelosi, Democratic Speaker of the House, she already had Trump impeached by that point. And she was like, hey, just go ahead and have the trial. McConnell refused. So that citing of procedural events, we can't do it, he's out of office, that's because McConnell dragged his feet so that they could use that excuse.
Did blame Trump essentially for what happened on January 6th. McConnell also says, I don't know whether you can make a conclusive argument that he's directly responsible for them storming the Capitol, but I think it's not in dispute that those folks would not have been here in the first place if he had not asked them to come and to disrupt the actual acceptance of the outcome of the election. And Dana, Mitch McConnell was so blunt throughout this biography. I've asked him many times over the last several years about Donald Trump, the aftermath of it, their falling out and the like. He rarely wants to engage in this topic, but he did here in this biography. He calls Trump at one point a sleazeball, a narcissist. He said not very smart, called him nasty, and just about every quality you would not want somebody to have. But he has endorsed Donald Trump, of course, and his office was asked about why he said this or any comment about his comments. He said, whatever I may have said about President Trump pales in comparison to what J.D. Vance, Lindsey Graham, and others have said about him, but we are all on the same team now.
I mean, wow. It's certainly a lot, and I totally hear you on the argument that he voted no to he voted to acquit Donald Trump in the impeachment trial. But imagine if he didn't. If he were impeached and convicted, he wouldn't have been able to run for president. So Mitch McConnell, would have been able to change all of the things that he describes himself in that book.
Yeah, no question.
Would have been different history.
So an excellent point, and this is why I think it's interesting, and it's kind of darkly funny. The reason I say there's a dark comedy to it is because now we're all paying the consequences of Mitch McConnell's miscalculation. But it seems pretty obvious McConnell thought that was the end for Trump, that the Republican Party would finally emancipate itself from MAGA, and McConnell was dead wrong. And not only is he paying the price, there's a reason McConnell is going to serve out the rest of his term. He may or may not seek a re-election at the end of his term. But one thing he's not doing after the November election, he's actually resigning from Senate leadership. He's doing what Nancy Pelosi did, and he'll serve out the rest of his term, but he's no longer going to be part of Republican leadership. That is in part because there's so much defiance of McConnell now as a consequence of Trump's influence on the Republican Party. McConnell used to run a tight ship. I'm sure a lot of people didn't like him personally, but there was unanimity behind him. And now you have Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, a lot of Republicans in the Senate who will openly defy McConnell and criticize McConnell, and many have even called for new leadership. That's not good for McConnell. McConnell helped create that situation by allowing Trump to remain a viable political candidate. Again, he thought politically that the American people and the Republicans were done with it. But it's almost like this is an analogy, but since we're very close to Halloween, I think it fits. You know how in the horror movie, you got to make sure the monster's actually defeated, right? You don't just assume they are, because of course that's when they pop up 30 seconds before it cuts to credits to attack you again, and then it ends on a cliffhanger or on a really bad ending, a twist ending. That's what McConnell did politically. He just assumed that was the end of Trump, as many people did. And we were wrong. Everybody was wrong. This was not the end of Trump. And McConnell is now paying the price, as Dana Bash points out. The irony is thick. Of course, all the other things that McConnell said about Trump are true. He is a sleazeball. He isn't very smart. McConnell also said that he hopes that Trump pays a price, which I'm not sure if Manu Raju said that, but it was pretty. He says, McConnell also expressed support for special counsel Jack Smith's investigations into Trump's actions surrounding the 2020 election and insurrection. Quote, I think it was the single most in a category by itself of how wrong how wrong all of it was. And there's no doubt who inspired it. And I just hope he'll have to pay a price for it, said McConnell. If he hasn't committed indictable offenses, I don't know what one is. And yet he's endorsing him for president anyway. Trump is a problem. and Trump has his issues, and Trump is a terrible person and fascist. McConnell, in his own way, is just as bad. McConnell is the Dr. Frankenstein of the Republican Party. If you ever read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, spoiler alert, the monster helps kill Dr. Frankenstein in the end and ruins Frankenstein's life. The monster does. And that's the irony, that this person was destroyed by his own hubris and by his own creation. And that's the story of Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. It's a very Shakespearean tale. But yeah, these are pretty spicy quotes. And I got to say, I am amused by McConnell's response, like just a shrug, like, yeah, I talk smack about him, but so basically everybody else, and nobody cares. And so I'm not going to apologize for it. I said what I said, but here we are. We're a part of the same team. Just the shamelessness of it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.